Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I thought I would talk a little bit about the different fibers that you can tat with. And basically, the bottom line is if you can get the rings to close, you can tat with it. I've prepared a sample board here. The smallest is the size 80, which is pretty close to sewing thread size. You can see that. My Aunt Merce, who inspired me to learn how to tat, she used mostly size 80 thread. And as you can see, it's very tiny. I did try to tat with sewing thread once. I would not recommend it, but it does produce a very delicate looking lace. The pearl cotton size 12 is the next size up, and 40 and 20 are pretty equivalent. Size 20 is one of the most common tatting threads, and then the pearl cotton size 8. The difference between the cotton tatting threads and the pearl cottons tend to have more of a little sheen. On this side, the crochet cotton size 10 is also a very popular size. And then the size 5 is also equivalent. And the pearl cotton, again, has the sheen to it. When I first started tatting, I used almost exclusively pearl cotton. And then the largest tatting thread size is size 3. You can also tat with yarn, and that's the main topic that I wanted to cover here today. Is you can tat with yarn using a shuttle if you can get the rings to close. I have a little example here I wanted to show you. I don't know if you can see that. The yarn, for those unfamiliar with different fiber types, the yarn has a halo, which is the fibers that are not wound tightly into more of a thread type fiber. Tatting thread is mercerized, which means it's spun and spun tighter. The yarns are a looser weave, which means the halo is more evident, as you can see here. You can still create the knots, but the trick here is you create them as loosely as you can. You don't pull them. You pull them tightly against the base of your chains and your rings, but you don't form each side of the knot that tightly. Because if you think about it, this pattern, the 4, 4, 4, 4, each ring has 16 knots in it. So eventually you're going to have to pull hard enough to bring 16 rings into, or 16 knots into a ring shape. So you want to make sure that as you are creating the ring, it is sliding very easily. Okay, I have the first 4. And I join again. You do everything the same, you just are creating the knots as loosely as possible. And when you join picots, again, you can see all of this fiber here is sticking out, which is going to hinder when you try and close the ring. So there's the join. And of course, I am making this look extremely easy and quick. Believe me, a beginner will need to practice this a lot. All right, 4. And again, you can see I check a lot to make sure that these still slide easily enough. And I'm coming up to my last ring or my last stitch. Okay, so there's 16 stitches, and I want to close. Make sure they slide, you take it off, and you can see the fibers are starting to separate. And you want to make sure you're going to keep the ring strand separate from the chain strand so that they don't get attached. And you just try and close that ring as much as possible. But you see, it's not closing totally at the base. You're going to have to work with that. And you can see how tightly I'm pulling that. Don't be surprised, depending on the type of yarn. You pull on that, it's going to break right there. I have done that hundreds of times. If you are motivated enough to use your desired fiber, you will practice enough to make it happen. That's why I wanted to show this to you, to encourage you to try. It can be done. You just have to practice. So you made your ring, and if it doesn't seem the same size as the last ring, you just play with it. You can do it carefully. Then you flip it over and you start with your chain. This is a DK size yarn. And then the last size is your medium worsted weight size 4. This DK weight size 3 is what I use to make this, which is just a circular motif which could be used as a coaster. You could add rounds to make it a doily, but it is yarn. Now I also wanted to say making chains in yarn is much easier because you're never going to have to close the ring. The rings are what create a more difficulty with yarn because you have to pull on them to close. You can make chains all day long with yarn. So chains only could be used to make a tatted shawl, for example. But I wanted to show the difference in size. This is a DK weight yarn. This is a similar size pattern done in size 20. And you can see they're going to come out much different sizes. I hope this gave you some examples of the different types of fibers that you can use to make different things. And I did want to say you can do anything you put your mind to do. Just practice and you can do it. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.